Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tyred Boys podcast. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. We've got an action-packed Singapore Grand Prix weekend for you. A lot to talk about, some different driver news and conversations and everything. But Justin, good to see you. I'm excited to get into it.
Good to see you too. We are back to back this week. Obviously, just coming off of the Baku race straight into Singapore. This one was quite exciting. I really enjoy the night races. You know, I didn't realize night races haven't really been around that long. Only I believe it was 2018 was the first time that they did a night race. I think that was what they said on the broadcast. So I thought that was really cool and just like, oh shit, like really hasn't been going on that long. But
yeah, I think Singapore
great one
was,
this time.
Yeah, I think Singapore was the first one initially. So yeah, one of the newer things, but yeah, a fun weekend overall.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Have a lot to get into on this episode. We got some quick hitters, couple of move and shifts in team personnel. So we'll have some stuff to cover in Do You Work Here, and then we'll get straight into the Singapore Grand Prix review. But let's start with some quick hitters.
Yeah, so just some brief IndyCar news and whatnot. We had an announcement that Logan Sargent is going to be getting to do an IndyCar test with Meyershank Racing in November. So looks like that is his hopeful kind of trajectory after leaving Formula One mid-season from Williams. So hopefully he'll be able to go put on a solid performance there, and maybe we'll get to see him racing over in IndyCar back in the U.S. In his home. So that would be pretty cool to see, but of course he's gotta be able to perform there as well. So that test will give him the opportunity to do so.
Well, and let me just tag on to the IndyCar conversation. Interesting for our U.S. compatriot Logan Sargent. Yeah, you would imagine for other teams in series, somebody driving at that level, while not like not the winningest driver in Formula One, but being there for a period of time would say something about his pedigree, I'm sure. So yeah. It's fun to see that his talents will be tested elsewhere. Did you hear? This came, I believe, yesterday or the day before. Doubt it would have came out on Sunday, but the IndyCar series is adopting a charter system now. So 10 teams, 25 slots. Being a chartered team guarantees entry to any of the IndyCar series events, notably not the 500, and then also like into like the IndyCar awards and whatever their little whatever their like umbrella of like organizations are. They're moving forward with this charter system.
Interesting. So with 25 racers.
That was my understanding, right? So some teams getting 3 slots, some teams getting 2 slots.
That's interesting. I wonder how that. Do you recall seeing how that's decided? Which teams get more? Is it like a certain buy-in, or who are like premier members? They paid for that bonus subscription.
Premier member, it actually kind of sounds like would be like a decent way to think about it. It sounds like they took into account the participation over the last 2 seasons. So I'm guessing the one that just ended this year and then the 2023 season. So like whatever your like participation was in those 2 years, I think like that's how they decided it. And I'm sure like money, performance, like all of these types of things. But yeah, I mean, teams, seems interesting.
Yeah, some of the smaller teams have only fielded 2 drivers typically anyway, so I don't imagine it'll be much of a change. But that definitely is interesting, and hopefully that's a way that IndyCar can kind of garner some additional publicity or grow the sport. I feel like that's been one of the conversations of struggles of IndyCar, is that it kind of has been just not as well publicized or promoted over the past few years and everything. So getting the opportunity to grow that from teams being like officially partnered and everything with the series through that charter system, I think is a good way to at least kind of secure the involvement and support from those teams and drivers to push the series forward.
Yeah, and it seems like the more confidence IndyCar has in their charter teams, and then the charter teams have an IndyCar, once that confidence goes up, they'll be more willing to, and this is like an important piece of the conversation, we can kind of tie it back to Formula One, where they can now get like their own farm system going, right? Where they're not just in fear of always having to have like the best driver around and, you know, trying to grab in from everywhere. They can maybe try and cultivate some talent from within, likely pretty far away in that regard. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. I'm looking forward to more details. The article I read was very short, so like I said, looking forward to more details. But yeah, it sounded interesting.
Yeah, and I know obviously IndyCar, and I saw this actually a lot from people online over the past couple days with some of the F1 news coming out, but a lot of IndyCar fans seem relatively resistant to F1 being for IndyCar being the F1 driver dumping ground to some extent, similar to, I guess, in League of Legends when players were getting pushed out of Korean orgs going to North America for that sweet paycheck and retirement and all. I completely understand their point. Like, they have the India NXT series that has younger talent that they're trying to grow and develop into racers in the IndyCar series and everything. There is homegrown talent and all, but I feel like there's a good balance. There's not too many Formula One drivers over in IndyCar at this point, or people who are just like there because they like a Logan Sargent situation. They couldn't hack it in F1, and so they're testing out IndyCar. I'm glad he's getting a test, but again, it's just a test. There's no guarantee of a seat for him over in IndyCar this next year either. So I feel like IndyCar has struck a pretty good balance with that for now. But I think that will definitely bolster the opportunities for them to develop new drivers in the series and grow the series overall.
Yeah, definitely. That's an interesting, interesting piece of the conversation, because I know over the last couple of years, my eyes have turned more to IndyCar as, some of the driver names and some of the conversations, become linked to one another. So yeah, just all very.
I mean, it's
good
a high
for the sport moving forward.
It's a high level racing series, so I of course anticipate there's always going to be a little crossover, and maybe at some point IndyCar will be able to have some of the crossover the other way as well, that we had kind of talked about over the past couple of years with super license and whatnot, drivers getting opportunities, testing for Alex Plo, Colton Herta, and all in some of the cars. But one of the not so exciting pieces of IndyCar news from this past week was that the Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Racing Shop just outside of Indianapolis was actually raided by the FBI this past week. I was looking for follow-up articles after the initial story broke and everything, and I really couldn't find any reports of what was being investigated. Just that the Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan organization was working or cooperating with the FBI with whatever investigation, but just 8:30 a.m. wake up call the other day, knocking on the door, wanting to see computers and all sorts of stuff. So who knows? I'm definitely intrigued to hear what comes from it, but as of what I could find up until the start of the episode today, I had not seen any updates on what exactly had happened, other than their full cooperation being given to the FBI in their search, I guess.
Gotcha. Yeah, rumors around the team say that they were using IndyCar engines to power these computers, and they were mining Indy coin. They were trying to get rich quick scheme.
Ah, okay. So just scamming people out of their hard-earned Indy coin there. So can't be having that. But to move along into kind of the F1 side of things, just a note: it was Lewis's 350th race weekend this weekend at Singapore. And for a number of the teams, we had some different liveries. RB went with a denim livery, which I am not entirely sure why they did that, or if there were I never saw the reasoning behind it.
Gotcha. But I couldn't tell it was denim when I saw it on the car. I was just like, did they rip a hole in their shirt?
Yeah.
And I guess
just a nice little denim livery. I don't entirely get it. You'd think that in that Singapore heat that denim would be a hot fabric to be wearing, but either way, Mercedes also had a livery which was a collaboration, or I guess a celebration of their partnership with Petronas, which I believe it was their 50th. It's their 50th year being partnered with Petronas at Mercedes or something like that. So they had a cool teal livery going on. And then Red Bull, the big announcement from them was that they decided to forego their special livery for the weekend because it was compromising performance with the additional weight. So Justin, I know this is your favorite. That's your favorite thing. You supported it wholeheartedly. You'd see 20 black carbon fiber cars out there if you could. But it's funny that we've talked about that across the year early on with Alpine trying to cut weight, having more carbon fiber showing on their car, and now that Red Bull is in second in the constructor standings, and Max has quite a battle on his hands to hang on to the drivers' championship. Making sure that car is as light and sleek as they can to give it extra performance.
I can appreciate that kind of min-maxing. If you're a team that says like all you care about is winning, this shows me you are about that life, and I love that.
And I saw a tweet that someone was like, "Oh, Max's helmet next is with trying to save weight," and it was just a plain carbon fiber like black helmet. And someone had quote tweeted it and been like, "You're joking about this, but Nico Rosberg literally did this when he was in the title fight. With, he just went with a straight no paint helmet to cut down any additional weight. That 0.03 kilograms just was holding him back, but."
Wild. Okay, gotcha. So it's like actually this happened.
Yeah, basically.
Gotcha. That's funny.
Which I found amusing looking at it, but I mean I get it. It's one of the, especially with the car, that's a lot of paint. I'm sure it does save a bit, and if I remember correctly, the designs for their special livery for Singapore were pretty intricate and everything. So hey, if that's what you've got to do to be competitive, have at it. The thing you can't do to be competitive, though, is have a fake DRS when you're leading. So McLaren did get told by the FIA that they're going to have to modify their rear wing so that it doesn't open while it's on the straights when the DRS is closed. So that bending of the edges was deemed to be outside of the regulations. So they are going to have to make that change. I imagine it will be a relatively minor difference, probably some slightly heavier fasteners on it to hold it in place a little bit better or something like that. But yeah, they'll have to modify that to avoid that issue.
Now, I wasn't entirely clear. Was that an intentional designed element, or was that something that occurred due to like wear during the session?
No, it seemed like it was a designed element of the rear wing, that they were like that it kind of like the Mercedes like wire connector on the front wing that they had at the start of the season, that they're like the rear wing it passes all of the like you can't have a flexible wing tests that the FIA does when it's under no aero, when you're just like bending it and trying to like, does it bend? But when it was under that aero force, that flap like kind of slightly opening and all. So it seemed like it was, and based on looking at it, it looked like their rear wing was designed a certain way aerodynamically. That may have been an unintended result of the way they designed their wing, but it was benefiting them overall by a kilometer or 2 per hour on the straights with the DRS closed. So not a huge benefit, but enough that the FIA was like, yeah, you gotta make sure that doesn't do that.
For sure. Yeah, because like I only was able to look at like grainy photos from like under the car, like 100 meters away. So it's like I don't know. And I have such a McLaren bias. Like I'm a naive little squid in that regard. You know what I mean? I'm just like, yeah. I mean, it just looks like the livery's ripping. No, like I didn't know what I was looking at.
Yeah, there were not very many good photos, and a lot of it was pulled from like onboard cameras from Baku. It seemed like that was the first time that this had really been noticed. So I don't know if it was a specific rear wing that I didn't look at all their upgrades for Baku and see if they had brought like a circuit specific rear wing or something like that. But it was like, I don't think it was initially like a planned thing, but they were like, hey, well, like it passed the tests, and if it gives us a little extra, then hey, we didn't do it intentionally, kind of thing.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
But yeah, so they do have to make that modification to their rear wing so that it won't open up at all. But yeah, those are the quick hitters for this week. So moving right along into our Do You Work Here segment, we had a couple of things announced with Red Bull's organizational changes and whatnot. So GP, who is Max's race engineer, was promoted to the head of racing at Red Bull. But he is going to continue on as Max's race engineer. Max was asked about it, and it sounds like they're just shifting around responsibilities. So he'll be that head of racing, but still not just fully doing like 2 jobs. So he'll still be able to perform that duty. I think it's more so that Red Bull just didn't want to subject someone else to Max's abuse. They're like, this guy knows how to handle it. If we throw someone else in there, who knows? They might quit mid-race.
Yeah, that's actually that's actually an interesting conversation. Like, would you ever make that choice based on rapport and wanting somebody that can like just absorb Max's like frustrations and his abrasive calm style. And I am not one to like nitpick how people communicate. Like I'm actually the worst. So not even to like condemn him for the way he communicates, just thinking like that's really interesting to where like yes, they have this long running relationship, they've won championships together. He very much like absorbs Max's I guess explosiveness is like just the best way to think about his his mentality when he is under pressure in a race. So yeah, that's a really interesting angle that I'm not sure I thought of. It is interesting, like going down to our next point. I think these conversations are like kind of somewhat related. We have the Red Bull head of race strategy, Will Courtenay, leaving after 14 years to go to McLaren, becoming the sporting director there. This is now a few members of the Red Bull like senior division personnel, people, whatever you want to call them, that are seeking different opportunities. So it's interesting to see the drivers. This is where I'm going with it. It's interesting to see the drivers being asked about this, because it really is like coming into their world in some way, with it affecting GP and some other members that would be in or around and informing pit wall decisions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we saw it a little bit this week, kind of on a side note with Yuki Tsunoda. He and his race engineer have only been working together for a few races now, with a mid-season change, and his engineer was telling him like, oh hey, like this and that, and oh like you had pretty good pace, like on that last stint or whatever. And Yuki was like, are you being sarcastic? And it, like on the broadcast they were like, and his race engineer was like, no, like you were doing a good job, like keep it up, kind of thing. But on the broadcast, they even talked about how there's still some of those communicational, there's some communicational growth that is going to be needed between Yuki and his race engineer, because they haven't had a long time to build that relationship and to understand how each other talks to each other and everything. Yuki snapped a little bit during the race, I think it was, when his engineer was saying, oh, you've got these two people who are fighting ahead, like you may have an opportunity to get in the mix, kind of thing. And Yuki was like, too many words, like I need shorter communication, and all to get your point across. And I think in Max's case, I joking, of course, about Max potentially making someone quit mid-race, but like I think that having that rapport, you look at Lewis and his move to Ferrari, and there were conversations before all the little contractual things came in about wanting, or about Bono potentially leaving Mercedes and following Lewis to Ferrari. And they're not able to do that. But like, I think it does make a huge difference when those drivers are under some pretty extreme stress and everything during a race and race weekend, to have clear communication and to really have that rapport and relationship with their race engineer makes a difference.
Yeah, something you said about Yuki, the way he said less words. Maybe rapport is actually the wrong way to think about it. It's like a shorthand between them
Yeah, well,
that you
and
would
that
want to develop.
right, and that communication style, maybe, or however you want to say it, that
Right.
you can get your point across efficiently. Like efficiency is key.
Yeah.
You only have so many seconds while a driver's going down a main straight to try and talk to them before they're hitting the braking zone and making a turn and all that stuff. We've seen all these conversations about people, including Toto Wolff, accidentally jumping into George's ear mid braking point during I think it was Hungaroring when Max and Lando hit each other, and he's like, "You could win this, George," and George is like, "Never do that to me again." Like, I'm in the middle of a corner, and you're all of a sudden I've got Toto in my head. It's one of those things that really, like, yeah, I think efficient communication, which really comes from experience and knowing the person you're talking to, will make a big difference. So I think it's a smart strategy from Red Bull's side to be able to maintain Jean-Pierre as Max's race engineer, along with the shift a little bit in responsibilities on the back end.
Yeah, and you would hope that basically you would love for this to be a change we get to talk about now, and we never really like notice it kind of ever again, because what you wouldn't want to see is maybe like a lack of precision start to happen, and maybe now I'm just like whatever making stuff up, but like he has other responsibilities in his head. He's not like thinking about the race as much as he should be. Just these things where you hope that an increase in responsibility or a shift in responsibility doesn't take away from the level of performance that him and Max are able to reach together on track, because
Right.
I'm sure the team would agree like that's the most important part to like maintain, right?
Definitely.
For
And
sure.
so, yeah, I'm sure that was a big part of the kind of thought process as they're going through that. Um, but looking, kind of staying in the Red Bull lane, one of the big pieces of news that like semi broke, and so this is where it gets a little weird for me. Is Daniel Ricciardo's future leading into the weekend? Ralph Schumacher had been one of the initial people who I had seen who said that it seems that Singapore is going to be Daniel's last race. Liam Lawson will be coming into the seat from then on for the rest of the year. So Ralph Schumacher said that on Sky Sports before the weekend, or leading into the weekend last week. But there has been no official announcements or anything from Red Bull, from VCarb, RB, or anything. I even saw some unconfirmed little bits and pieces that there was a lot of confusion from the Visa Cash App and like the sponsor side from the RB team about not being kind of like aware of any changes, and this kind of just blew up throughout the weekend with Daniel's future being in question, and him even saying like I don't really know what my future is going to be from here. I guess his contract was technically through the Singapore race, but of course they could extend that. I don't know if it was like a maybe because he came in mid-season for Nick DeVries that his contract was like
Like
two
24 races total.
or like 2 years or whatnot. So
Right.
I don't know exactly what the circumstances were, but he seemed to kind of not know whether it was going to be the end of his time in Formula One
Okay.
and whatnot. So, and still, of course, we have no announcement at this point of what's going to be happening, and we have a long break up until the next race. I think it's a nice little 4-week break here until mid-October when we have the next race weekend. But I assume we'll get some announcements, but it was kind of an unexpectedly sad weekend all of a sudden from a lot of the drivers, the broadcasts, and Daniel has a lot of people who support and appreciate him, his personality, his driving. He's had a phenomenal career. Not too many drivers get to 8 race wins in their career, so kind of a unknown there whether that's the end for Daniel or not. But yeah, odd weekend with that.
Yeah, for it to come in so quickly and then just basically by the rumor mill, you have, Crofty and Brundle on the broadcast talking about it as though, like, oh, not like this, Daniel, like, not P18, don't retire the car. But I have to say, it was on the international broadcast. I did really love the moment where, like, what they thought was happening did not happen at all, and he actually did the exact opposite of what Brundle thought he was doing. On the international broadcast, Brundle was like, oh, he's just retiring the car, like, not like this, not like this. Crofty's like, well, hold on. And Brundle's like, oh, he doesn't have soft tires, like, what's he doing? Like, oh, fastest lap, like, like, really, like, giving it to him. And then there he goes out in the car again, and he slurps that shit up. And I was like, yeah, dude, you guys, come on, man, like, cut him some slack. I thought it was a very funny moment.
I think it's a great way to potentially, like, be your last thing in F1. Like, I think it's cool. Like, if that is the end, which I hope it's not, and I hope he would get a proper send off from people. Like, I don't think any of his friends or family or anything like that were at the race,
Sure.
because this was relatively, like, sudden that this kind of came out into the news. But to be like, hey, I want to just go fast one last time, that I appreciate it. A lot of people were like speculating on, oh, it's the Red Bull sister team. He's trying to get that extra point for Max.
Yeah, good.
It's like, hey, well, if he is, like, he could have been doing that because he's buddies with Max. He could be doing that because he just wants to drive fast. Who knows? Like, but he did say, when people, like, talked to him about it, he's like, well, I know if Max wins the championship by 1 point, then I'm guaranteeing myself a great Christmas gift. So had a little bit of humor to it, but yeah, kind of a sad little cloud over the weekend.
Yeah, but, like, we knew when the conversation started of him even being brought back into Formula One. We knew then. We were like, I mean, what is the upside here? What's, like, really the... We did not have high hopes, and there was clearly an expiration date on it. Like,
yeah, I just didn't anticipate it to be mid-season. Like, that's where I think, like, I thought that like, if he wraps out this season and they're like, they still haven't announced their second driver, if they're like, okay, Liam Lawson's coming in at that point, I would have been like, hey, okay, like, he didn't beat Yuki enough throughout the season to really, like, continue on. They do want to use the RB team as more of a fielding ground for younger talent to develop and everything. Like, that I would have been, like, a lot more understanding, I think, than just Ralph Schumacher dropping a bomb at the start of the weekend and it just snowballing kind of out of control as the rumor mill went downhill. But yeah, I agree with you though that it was kind of a hey, like if you put in really good performances, like you have that potential to jump up, but if you're just going to be kind of meandering around the track, then yeah, what is the point of having you there instead of a younger driver with more of an unknown ceiling, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, especially when they can see their other car in Yuki Tsunoda cracking into the points more and more. They're developing at a rate that seems to indicate like improvement over time. They're not going backwards. Yuki seems to be improving overall. Likely more like above 10 finishes than I'm remembering. But yeah, if you know your car is capable of this or if you know your car is capable of like P10, P9 and Daniel's only ever able to get you close to that in the other car, yeah, you have to feel like you're as a team, leaving something on the table, right?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. And yeah, at that point, it's like you're not developing him as a driver anymore. Like he is a driver, and he either has it or he doesn't. At that point,
Right.
he had the opportunity at Renault, he had the opportunity at McLaren, he gets the additional opportunity at RB. It's like how many times is enough to say, okay, like we know what we've got here, and it's time to try something new. It's not a knock to his career at all. He's had a phenomenal career. Like I said, I saw a stat that's like only 5% of F1 drivers have had 8 or more race wins in the entire history of Formula One, and so he's in that top 5% with a lot of great signature moments and memories. So either way, if it is the end, like congratulations to him on a great career. A bummer to go out not near your peak, but at the same time, like you went for it, you did what you love as long as you could. So
Yeah, I think that's pretty well said. I think on all accounts I would tend to agree.
yeah, but looking at the other kind of news that's still up in the air, but before and then during the weekend, Sauber, of course, is still looking for their second seat. It seems to have narrowed down to Franco Colapinto, Valtteri Bottas, and Gabriel Bortoleto as the final three that are being looked at. But as of today, this morning, I saw a rumor that was put out that Valtteri had signed a new 1-year contract. It has not been confirmed. So still waiting to see what the result is with that. But I think it would be an interesting move. They have the opportunity to go for a younger driver. I'm not really sure what the entire... Similarly, like if you're looking at Ricardo, like I don't necessarily see in the same vein the point of Valtteri just driving around in P19 with his teammate in P20 in the Sauber, like just putting in laps, as opposed to, again, like going for one of these younger talents. Franco Colapinto's been on fire since coming into Formula One, taking Logan Sargent's seat. Phenomenal race and start this past weekend, along with a couple of other great races so far. It's definitely it would be interesting if they go with Valtteri. I'd be curious to see what Bortoleto and Colapinto end up doing. Bortoleto currently leading the Formula 2 championship. If he wins, he'll be out of Formula 2. So then another young, talented driver who may not have a seat in Formula 1. So either reserve driver duties or whatnot. And then similarly for Colapinto, I guess we'll see what they do. He could maybe come on as Williams reserve driver or something like that. But yeah, that last Sauber seat still up in the air. Zhou Guanyu, though, being out of contention, it sounds like, for that. And I was kind of looking what Zhou's maybe next step might be. We see Logan Sargent testing in IndyCar and whatnot. I was curious for a younger driver. But from all accounts and interviews with him, it sounds like he wants to stay around Formula One to try and maybe find an opportunity back in at some point. It didn't seem like he was interested in other racing series, but I was kind of curiously peeking around at that to see if he had any interest in other series or Formula E or who knows what. But yeah, it sounds like at the moment Formula One is his kind of one-track mind.
Let me put my tinfoil hat on here for a second. So, to your question about like why Bottas over, one of these younger guys, what if they know it's Sauber gonna be Audi? What if they know that no matter who they put in the car, it's gonna be P18? What if to them it's not worth having a young driver in a slow car who, to my mind, would know less about building a competitive vehicle and not building the car, but like being the driver inside. Yes, thank you. Developing would be the right word. To my mind, a Valtteri Bottas would know more about developing a vehicle than a Bortoleto or like a Colapinto. So if you are Sauber, gonna be Audi, you're looking at 2026. Every decision that they're making is for 2026, 2027. That's like what it sounds like. The way they're talking, the way they're presenting a lot of like their choices and decision making. So, if I'm them, I want somebody contracted in that seat that can help us develop the car in the right direction once we onboard a bunch of new minds and a bunch of new engineers and let's get some fresh energy in here. Like, all right, that's great. I am curious if they aren't using his like veteran slash experience to help put them on the right track once they shift over and become Audi and have a good start to their campaign.
Yeah, I mean, that could be it. It could be, hey, we are Kick Sauber is leaving Formula One, and we have this commitment through 2025, and we'd ideally like to not spend millions of dollars on crashed out cars too. Like it could be a combination of things with that.
And that would make sense to me too. Yeah,
it would. I think it's one of those bummers of Formula One where you see the talent potential, especially with like Colapinto. Bortoleto, he hasn't driven in Formula One, you can't say for sure. But Colapinto's come in guns blazing, and really firing on all cylinders. From the get-go with Williams and everything jumping into that seat. And so after getting that little taste of it, I'm like, I want to see what that guy has to offer for across a full season. But again, if he's just driving around trash can, a wheelie bin in P19, P20, then that isn't really too beneficial for anyone in that aspect either. So
Yeah, like not even them. Like not even like the young driver. Like they don't want to be there.
Yeah, it's not really beneficial for the team in terms of development, like you said, but also to him to be in a just trash can of a car at the moment, at least. So
a lemon.
Yeah, but I guess we'll have the opportunity over the next few weeks to continue to see his development, and I have a feeling Sauber's gonna. If they didn't make that move on Valtteri that I saw rumored, maybe they're just holding off on making that final decision until they see a bit more, get a little bit more data in the works to look over and make that final decision there. But yeah, that was a lot of conversation before we even get into this week's race weekend. But any other quick hitters, changes in personnel, anything?
Nope.
No. So we'll change over to the Singapore weekend. But before we do that, if you're listening and following along, make sure you're liked and subscribed. Check out the YouTube channel, Spotify, and everything. Check out our payx.com page, not Twitter, even though I say tweet all the time.
That's got to be brutal for them. They're like, you can't undo that from the collective
it's
conscious.
Just stuck in my brain. I will forever struggle to call it a post. But anyway, we're really looking to try and get to 100 subscribers by the end of this year. So pretty big goal, but we appreciate anyone who's listening along if you take the time to go and press those buttons. But thank you for listening with us.
Tell your friends and family. New episodes released after every Formula One race weekend. We appreciate you listening so much. Back to the show.
All right. So getting into, we had the F1 Academy this week. Did you watch the races and check them out at all, or?
Yeah, of course. I've got to support my girl Abby Pulling. She's my favorite driver right now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I went and watched along as well, but just looking, I wanted to look more at the overall kind of race weekend instead of doing too deep of a breakdown because we've got plenty of F1 to talk about. But Abby Pulling, super dominant weekend, winning, going from pole to victory in both races this weekend. In race 2 on the safety car restart. Maintaining that lead and building a gap again pretty quickly to protect her position there out front. But just a really impressive drives from her, and with the standings, she is a dominant first place in the standings, and I'm just very impressed and kind of intrigued to see. I know she's done a little bit of racing in other series and whatnot, but I'm kind of now that we are coming up to the last 2 races of the F1 Academy season and all, I'm curious to see where it builds from here, what opportunities kind of arise from this, as opposed to it just being a kind of one-off gimmicky thing. I would love to see some of these drivers continue to develop and find their way into developing in other series and whatnot as well, whether F3, F2, or some of the other professional series. Dorian Penn is racing in the World Endurance Championship with her team, the Iron Dames. So there's definitely the opportunities out there. So now that we've seen, especially with Abby Pulling, how strong of a driver she is, I'm excited to see the trajectory from here on.
Yeah, there's an interesting question there because, what is... I think you have to know the answer to the question of previous to F1 Academy, what is the most prestigious female driving discipline? Like, where should they be looking to go? Or is it something where, like, we should be excited to see Abby Pulling there next year to, like, defend her title? Like, is that the exciting angle? Or is the exciting angle, like, oh no, she gets a contract for, like, Formula 3 next year with Trident Racing or whatever? Like,
Yeah.
what is supposed to be the trajectory? I actually don't know.
And I don't really either. I know that she's currently racing in British F4 as well, so she's in both the F1 Academy series as well as
Okay.
British Formula 4. So maybe Formula 3 is that next spot.
Gotcha.
But
So they want to crack into like the F3, F2 endurance cup, like that kind of like IndyCar level, that like not tier 1 but tier 2 racing.
I would hope so, at least. I mean, she's
Okay.
I think that would have to be the goal for someone in that position, is to continue to progress, like whether it's into another higher level racing series or whatnot. But there has to be, I guess, something there to kind of move up to, if or maybe it is coming back and defending the championship, or maybe it's driving in multiple series next year as well. I don't really know, which is why, as we're, like you said, getting here to the end of the F1 Academy season, 2 races left, I'm curious to see where that goes from there.
Yeah, because like if the idea is for F1 Academy to be like the premier women's like driving series, then these ladies are already doing it, and we'll see them for likely the next like year to 3 years, depending on how well they do, and then we'll just see some other female drivers shift in, and like winning the title would be like, you would want winning the title here to mean the same as it does when Lando wins the title, or when like you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or like when Pillow wins the title. Like I'm curious if that's the goal of their series, like when they put it on. So yeah, I think we would actually have to get the answer to different questions before we could answer that.
Yeah, I would agree with you, but I think if this is going to be the pinnacle of a women's racing series, that there's a lot of regulation and development that they'll have to do in regards to the vehicles and everything. So that's why I think that's why I have trouble imagining this being like a this is the peak, I guess, because
Sure.
I think the ideal scenario is for women to get driving opportunities now in a longer standing series and whatnot, just based on pure merit, and now they've had the opportunity, or especially in Abby Pulling's case, has had the opportunity to show some real dominance in the car amongst women and everything, and she's also doing pretty well, it seems, in the British F4 series as well. So maybe there is that room to grow in the single seater racing series as a whole, and kind of break that glass ceiling for women into that Formula One trajectory. So I think long term that would have to be the ideal scenario, would be for women to have just more opportunities to race alongside men, just purely based on merit. But yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to start looking at, especially as we're getting here towards the end of the year.
Well, yeah, and I feel odd having these conversations because like we already have female hero drivers like Danica Patrick that exists in the world. So
Exactly.
there's no. We have already had a small selection of female drivers racing alongside male drivers in the same series. It would just be to like normalize it, get them into more of them. Yeah, so
Yeah,
maybe the
I think.
idea is like they could go kind of anywhere and this is a way for them to show their stuff in like legit machinery to actually get eyes to look at them and say like holy shit, these aren't good like female drivers. These are just good drivers. Like
Yeah,
we begin to think of Formula One Academy as like somewhere we're gonna go shop for our next big thing.
yeah, or just as another,
I like that idea.
yeah, just as another pool of talent that instead of just looking at the World Karting Series or F4 or whatnot to start
Hmm.
looking at. It's just another pool of drivers that have the opportunity to show their talent and everything. So I think it would be ideally just a jumping off point for that for teams and talent and everything.
Right.
But yeah, overall on the F1 Academy weekend, very dominant win by Abby Pulling in both races. Dorian Penn with a nice after getting a 5 second false start penalty, pulling that gap to maintain her podium place in the second race, being able to get the gap to P4 up to 5.2 seconds across the line. So a nice race from her and I don't know her first name, but Vogue, who's in the Ferrari livery as well. Really strong weekend with two P2 finishes for her.
Yeah, and I think these are a couple of drivers that have been in the top of the standings. Go look at each of the race weekends. You'll see them at the top of the standings. So yeah, a couple of drivers having solid weekends here. I'm interested. I'm actually kind of like chomping at the bit to talk about the pre-weekend press conference that has everybody in a kerfuffle. I actually think I have a great angle for you that's different than what you've already heard.
All right.
So
Well, lead in. I guess give a little bit of background for the people, and then I want to hear the angle you've got for it.
so before every Formula One race weekend, one of like the lesser known bits of content that like it doesn't really matter. Every team, every principal, every driver, they all say the same thing, but sometimes you get little gems. And at this pre-race press conference with the drivers, they're asked a bunch of questions basically by like the Formula One broadcast team. They like open up the questions and then they give it to the floor of like journalists. You have one journalist ask a question directly to Max where he wants him to break down what happened in Baku. He asks like, why was Sergio able to like get the better of you basically? And Max being flippant and short to Max's mind what would have sounded like a really dumb question. He was like, "Well, yeah, at a certain point I realized the setup was off. I couldn't maximize any more than I did in qualifying because of the rules, and I realized we were fucked." And he went on and continued his point, and then there was like a chill in the air. The Formula One broadcaster gives him the literal substitute teacher vibe. Let's watch our language, please. As he like turns away from Max, he doesn't even like treat him like a human in this moment.
He
Which
definitely
is
had someone in his ear who was like, "Hey,
sure,
hey, knock that off!"
sure,
Like,
yeah. Like keep the show going kind of deal.
yeah,
But yeah, he turns quickly away from it, gets like other questions going. But ultimately the whole kerfuffle was like about him just saying fucked during the press conference where they're not able to censor it or, let's say, soften it for the international broadcast. Like, if you're watching, it's going to go out.
Well, it's a recorded conference, so like they could bleep it out before they put it on the Formula One website. I don't know if it's something that's live broadcasted on F1 like TV.
Okay,
but I mean, either way,
that was my guess.
Either way, why they were journalists are still gonna hear what he said and be able to utilize that. So I don't know if that's like the side that they're coming from or what, but I don't know if it's like a lie, because it's typically happening at weird times, or it's always on Thursday, so I'm at work and I always just watch it like Thursday night when I get home from work. So I don't know, maybe it is live broadcast and they couldn't like bleep it out, but yeah, definitely a funny moment initially, but I'll let you continue.
Funny moment initially, but and that's what he gets roasted for, and that's what everybody now is just focusing on for the whole weekend. You even hear Oscar Piastri in the post-race, cool down room. He's even like, and hey, Lando, without cursing, how do you feel about this? So it's definitely like a meme on the weekend.
Well, because Max got the penalty that Max got for his swearing was a day of community service. Essentially, they set his penalty was that due to his language and misconduct that he is obligated to accomplish some work of public interest, which is just vague community service, essentially. Which, yeah, like you said, led into the weekend, it just becoming kind of this ongoing joke, essentially.
And I said this to you privately, it actually makes sense why they wouldn't fine him, because, like, I imagine money is, like, no object to them, and they won't learn anything, like, most importantly. So doing the uncomfortable punishment of making him waste a day and go like paint a park bench or something, like whatever he's gonna do. So I'll be honest, I think it's a heads up punishment. They're like obviously learning that these teams that are effectively made of money, that like they'll just pay it and forget about it. So it makes sense to me, whether right or wrong, I don't know. Just saying it makes sense. But here's the angle that I think people didn't want to focus on a weekend when they wanted to focus on Daniel Ricciardo too. So right after he said fucked, he was asked by Daniel Crofty whether Daniel Ricciardo deserves to be in Formula One. And Max gave an honest and true and really, really respectful answer of Daniel Ricciardo. He was like, I don't know about deserve, but he's done more in Formula One than most people ever do when they come into this sport. He's done more than most people ever have in their lives. He's like, there's also more life to live after this. Like, yeah, sometimes unfortunate things happen, but you know what? He's a good friend of mine. He's a good guy, and I see like nothing but positive things on the horizon for him. And that, like, truly came from Max's heart. Like, you could tell. Mm-hmm. It was, like, the honest words that he had to say about his friend. But nobody's going to say that on a weekend where, we hate to see Daniel Ricciardo go. Yeah, well, wouldn't it be nice to bring up the fact that, like, one of his fellow drivers had insanely kind words to say for this individual? Like, yeah, I think that would be the thing to focus on. And yeah, okay, so he said a bad word, but out of the same mouth, like, he was more than kind to somebody that like he knew and appreciated. So It's like, yeah, like, what kind of brush do you want to paint this with? Because yes, he said the F word, but I would argue the thing that he said after that means way more.
Right, and it wasn't his F word wasn't directed at any specific person. He said like that the car was fucked because they chose a different setup and you couldn't change it. He was like,
Yeah.
that was the situation we were in. Checo went with a different setup than me. We realized after quali that this was the situation we were in. It was just a very blunt answer, and I get what you mean with the money and everything to some extent, but just earlier this season, Yuki Tsunoda said the R word on the radio, talking about another driver not really realizing the significance behind it and everything, and he was fined 20,000 euros for that penalty. But all of a sudden, Max does it, a higher profile driver and everything. And I think that's where his frustration was coming from, was that he felt like they were trying to make a point in regards to him. Now we've got one of the big guys doing something bad, so now we can lay down the law and set a precedent moving forward because we caught one of the big ones. That's kind of how Max felt a little bit. It sounded like from some stuff he felt kind of like they were just using him to make a point, and the fact that it was him to do this, which is some of his frustration. I do agree with you. The spotlight should have been on Daniel and the things that Max said about him and everything, and not be overshadowed by this swearing. But in my mind, the FIA, by making that a thing, made it so much bigger of a spotlight on that one word than was necessary. If they had just said, hey, if we could just keep the language, not use profanity, that would be appreciated, and just moved on, no fine, no whatever, then I think that second part, or that next question that Max was asked, would have been more highlighted. So if that was kind of the detriment of the swearing, they really emphasized it and put a spotlight on it on their own. I saw some people saying and including some of the drivers being well, what we're risking our lives week after week out here in this extreme competitive sport and everything, and we're not, if you mic'd up, and they're right, if you mic'd up professional athletes across all other sports, you would be hearing that all over the place, and it just that's what happens in these highly competitive, high stress situations. People's vocabulary regresses to some extent. they're not as eloquent when they're in the car. But in this situation, I kind of thought that was a moot point, because this is just in a driver's press conference. It wasn't
yeah, exactly.
So that was one of the other things. But a lot of the drivers did kind of back Max up, whether it was by making jokes about it regarding the FIA and whatnot. Lewis, during the post-qualifying press conference, saying that he didn't feel like Max should actually serve his penalty, because he was I wouldn't do it. And of course, Lewis has had his fair share of headbutting with the FIA, with all of his jewelry consequences and whatnot that they've thrown at him over the years. But I really found that Max's solution was probably the best, and to me, just the most entertaining thing, that in the post-qualifying press conference, he essentially gave one-word answers and then held his own press conference outside. He initially started talking to the reporters in the hallway outside the FIA press conference room, and FIA staff told him that he wasn't allowed to do it there, and so he moved it to the television pen on the paddock and like took all the questions there. Because they were like, whoa, like, you can't do it here. And he was like, okay, I'll do it wherever. Like, he's like, I don't care where it is, as long as it's not in that room. So, yeah. And I also, like, I think the other part of it, it really shows, like, Max's character as well. Like, one, when he was giving one-word answers and, like, refusing to basically give any information, he apologized to the moderator and was like, this is not directed at you. I don't want to make you upset by thinking that you did something wrong. But then he also, like, genuinely took the time to make sure that all of the reporters had the answers and the information and like the sound bites and everything that they need to do their job and write their articles and all this stuff. Like, he was like, I'm not, like, they're not getting this for the FIA press conference that they're going to slap up on F1 TV and everything. He's like, but I'll make sure you guys aren't like just stuck with nothing because the FIA made me mad. So I think the way he handled it was probably as best he could, and the FIA even said there that there would be no like additional penalization based on his responses because he was giving answers, however brief they were. But I think they were just trying to save face.
Yeah, man, that feels like a weird scenario where you have three parties all pointing guns at each other, and it's just like, we can't, you know what I'm saying? It's like, he can't go too far, they can't, you know what I'm saying? And it's very, limit testing, if you will.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, I mean, this isn't the first time that we've seen Max kind of stiff some of the media and everything who've pissed him off. So it's he had this this part of the playbook down pretty well from his previous Sky Sports kind of blockade that he and Red Bull had a couple years back. But yeah, I think it brings up the interesting question of like, what is the driver's responsibility in terms of this? Like, I understand that you want some sort of decorum and everything, and I understand if a driver's being derogatory towards someone else and everything. Okay, maybe you can. That's when you step in and you're like, whoa, okay, like, you can't do that. But and like I said to you before we started today, the F1 broadcast consistently puts in team radio messages where they are bleeping out words or not bleeping out words that are swear words and everything onto the normal broadcast. Like, it's already out there, and your TV direction and production are hand selecting those bits of audio and putting them in the broadcast. Yet when it's the driver in their own like position deciding what to put out there, that's not okay. Like, it makes it a really murky line and murky waters for like what's okay, what isn't. And it's like, if you're worried about the young ears or whatever, like, kids aren't watching the FIA press conference. Kids are not, in most cases, going, ooh, I want to see the press conference before the race weekend and hear about, like, if you're worried about kids getting the wrong, like vocabulary and different things like that, I don't know. You've got the F1 Kids broadcast. Like, you've literally created an alternative safe space for children to enjoy the sport and to like digest that on more their level. Like, make that an every week thing. Make it an alternative broadcast that you have available. Don't make it a gimmicky one-off like 3 times a year. If you're really so worried about the decorum and the language and all of this stuff, like, you have ways of like doing that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think somewhere along the line we conflated, and we being people who are like just sports and athlete watchers in general, I think somewhere along the line what they we conflated their position in our kind of society with like role model. So in some way, because they know how to work really hard and achieve goals and push to the degree of winning, in some way we like respect that person, right? And we know that they have qualities in them that like are good to have like in a person if you want to like accomplish things and get stuff done. So on one hand, we like really appreciate athletes and we're like, damn, like these people are really good. But at the same time, we have to reconcile with the fact that they are not actually family friendly figures. Yes, they are fuck, I can't think of the word. What am I trying to think? They are something to aspire to be sure, but you have to understand, like, athletes are guttural mouth type people. They are the most competitive, edgy, aggressive people you have ever met, and not one moment in my life would I ever call them like a role model in that like regard.
Oh yeah.
There is something about wanting them to be role models and then also like having this broadcast where we show the drivers' personalities and like, oh, they're like characters in this kind of weird racing show that we have going on, right? Like, that's an angle. That's like part of how they broadcast the show.
Oh yeah.
And the races. So what I'm trying to get at is it's really, really hard to mesh those two, and it's moments like this where you realize it actually doesn't work because they want us to like get to know the drivers and like, oh, they all have different personalities, but if you show that personality, you will be fined community service. It's like, well, you can't have it both ways. So to your point, you either have to bleep it all or you just say, hey, this show is for adults. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and it's like with you, like Max said that like if he continues to be like punished with things like that, he's like it's going to discourage him from wanting to continue to race in Formula One and everything, like because he feels like a robot and that you can't show your personality and be yourself and everything. And like alongside that, like you said, with athletes and everything, I think that's more of a societal issue, that it's hard, like for a lot of people, not just some people, to differentiate the person from the athlete. Like I remember, like Tiger Woods, my personal favorite golfer of all time. I've watched him since he first started. I would watch golf with my dad like every Sunday, all the weekends. Anytime Tiger was playing, it was on TV. I loved watching Tiger Woods. I do not model my marriage after Tiger Woods' relationship. I can differentiate the person from the athlete. Extremely good athlete. I love watching Tiger Woods golf clips. I love, like, I will, anytime that a TikTok pops up with Tiger Woods hitting a golf ball a million miles down the fairway, like, I am just hooked from the get-go. They know how to get me. But, like, I even as a child was like, yeah, like great golfer, but like that stuff's like not great over there. And it's like I think it's a societal issue, but like you see this in the NFL even. Like the NFL will mic up specific and MLB, and they'll mic up specific players, and a lot of the times they do that, the start of their little like video of behind the scenes on the football weekend or whatever is literally the player going up to all of his teammates and being like, "Oh yeah, I got the hot mic this weekend. I got the hot mic. Watch what you say around me."
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's like these guys. They're adults. They use adult language. Mm-hmm. They are in highly competitive scenarios where your emotions and adrenaline run high, and your brain just like goes to what is the most efficient way to get my point across with my feelings. Like we're talking about
a really funny way to think about it.
Like
now the word "fucked" is just efficient.
It is. It can be used in so many different ways, but you know exactly what he meant. Yeah. He didn't have to say, well, yeah, with the setup, the balance was really off, and I was bouncing on the curbs, and like so then I didn't have the right downforce, and then my tire degradation was really bad, and so I couldn't really make the tires last or put it in the laptop. Like you don't need to say all that. The car was fucked. Like it was. It just is what it is. But yeah, I mean, if you're like, I just to kind of just like wrap it out, I guess. Like sure. I think one of my biggest frustrations was just the kind of like the good for me but not for thee attitude from the FIA, where like, well, if it's their broadcast, they can put like whatever audio clips that they want and everything in and select those like all of the team radios for every driver and every team can be heard by every other driver, every other team, like throughout the weekend. You don't have a private channel, like it's all out there, which is why teams have plan A, plan Q, plan like ZYX for their strategies to not give away any information. And it's like they are hand selecting clips where drivers are swearing or frustrated or angry and being like, here, listen to this. But then Max is like, says one thing and they're like coming down harshly. I think that there will be probably some changes made to the FIA's strategy of how to handle it. I know that the drivers union was actually having a closed meeting this week to kind of discuss some of these things and figure out like kind of as a whole what their side would like to do moving forward, and I guess in respect to their relationship with the FIA and all, which I appreciate. Like that's what the drivers' unions are for. It's for advocating for the drivers in different ways, and so I'll be very intrigued to see if the penalty gets changed or if they get rid of it completely. But I think it's a just peculiar thing that like really got blown so out of proportion by the way the FIA handled it.
Yeah, it seems like you probably could have handled it in a much more stealthy, kind of low key, way to go about it. But
yeah, they wanted to make an example of someone.
Well, and then Max makes an example out of them. Like you're. It's like weird eye for an eye behavior from like an international organization. You know what I mean?
100%. But yeah, to move into the actual race weekend here, why don't we go ahead and hit them with the winners and losers for this week? So I'll get into it. I'll give you both of my winners, and then kind of talk about both. But my first winner was Lando Norris, and my second winner was Nico Hülkenberg. both of them, phenomenal performances across the weekend. Nico had an insane qualifying performance. Qualifying, I think it was P5. Or no, I think it was P6. I just double checked myself. But P6 qualifying, and then able to hold off Checo basically the entirety of the race to maintain that points position, finishing P9 ahead of Checo in the Red Bull. Just solid performance. And for Lando, like, really, in my mind, couldn't have been a better weekend, minus Daniel Ricciardo stealing that fastest lap point. He led from he maintained his P1 after the first lap for the first time in his career with that pole position, and really a faultless drive in my mind. I saw some people who were giving him a little bit of flack for his little almost touches to the wall. Drivers were touching the wall all weekend long. Yeah. Like they're in ridiculous heat. They're doing it for over a 2-hour race, basically. Sweating out of their minds. Just like, you're at some point you're going to have a minor lapse in concentration. We saw it, last year or 2 years ago, where Max just did a full 360 spin, got passed back by Charles Leclerc, and then people were like, Max spin to win, and then this, like, Lando goes, leads from pole for every single lap, like, great drive and everything, and they're like, well, but he touched the wall a couple times. It's like, well, he still won by 21 seconds and drove a phenomenal race and everything. Like, it could have been bad. Like, there was a little damage, and Max, like, if he had hit that wall a little bit harder, who knows if Max could have put in some laps and caught up, but that didn't happen. So I have to just give major props to Lando for the performance and his third career race victory. So pretty huge weekend.
It's funny that you have Hulkenberg as one of your winners, because I have as one of my losers everybody that had to pass Hulkenberg, everybody that got backed up by him, everybody's race that was put on the back burner because of him. It was that type of, like, out of position performance that just, like, messes everything else up. But he was just in there living his best life. He was like, I'm gonna get these points. I don't care.
I mean, and that's like what happens at street circuits. Like, if like, you could say the same thing if he did this at Monaco. You could be like, oh, everyone was stuck behind him, couldn't get past. It's like they even added an extra DRS zone to Singapore, and it didn't help at all.
Not at all. 4 of them.
Yeah, 4 DRS zones, and you can't get past a single person. But yeah, I mean, like, 100% with you on that for losers. that was a brutal position to be in if you were stuck behind Mr. Nico Hulkenberg.
But yeah, jokes aside, I just want to, because McLaren as a team for me was my winner, and I'll just add on one thing just to what you said about Lando. I just want to think back to the race where they were on the radio with Lando saying, "You're gonna give the place back, right? You're gonna give the place back, right? Don't do us dirty like this, Lando. Please don't do us like this." They're literally, like, begging him on the radio. I mean, obviously, they think they're about to scuff. Right, they think they're about to scuff everything. They think they're about to ruin everything that they just worked for, right? So you can tell during that race, they're, like, worked up. They're amped up. I imagine the McLaren team that won this weekend would look back on that race and not even recognize that team, right? Because they worked really well together. Both Piastri and Norris, like, running their own strategies, like, relatively independent of each other, perfectly fine. I think Lando really improved on his release protocol, his start protocol. I mean, that was
Great
perfect.
Start.
Nothing went wrong there, and that's usually where he's lost his races, right?
Yeah.
Main weakness.
The second the lights went out, you can tell it within half a second, if you've watched a lot of Formula One, but half a second after the race started, I was like, oh, Lando got a good start. I was like Max didn't get a bad start. Lando got a good start, and you could just see that he was holding position. I was like, without an egregious dive bomb, there was no way that Max was getting past him to turn one, and I'm just super impressed by Lando, But what was your second winner aside the McLaren team there?
Ferrari, for the upgrade package that they brought, really understanding what the problem of the Singapore track was going to be. I think the update that they brought to their front wing really kind of helped them eke out their advantages. Weird Q3 with Carlos Sainz putting it into the wall, guaranteeing the 9-10 position for both Leclerc and himself. Weird Q3 from them, and then to bring it back, improve their position in the race. Sainz, at one point in the race, he was all the way down in P17 I believe it was after the first round of pit stops. So my man had so much work to do, and both as a squad, Leclerc and Sainz, both able to work their way up through the pack, both on pit timings, tire deltas, and some overtaking. It wasn't just all sick overtakes all the way through the field. They're catching other teams' timings on their pit
window, yeah.
Pit windows. Thank you.
Yeah.
So not all to overtakes, but overall, I think Ferrari really took a tough Saturday and made it work on Sunday, which was enough for me to give Ferrari my second winner there for the weekend.
Yeah, and like you said, after a really tough start, I know Carlos Sainz, not only he was bewildered by what was going on with the tire temps during his because that was not during his hot lap. That was during his out lap prepping for his hot lap in Q3 there. He was coming around the last turns, and the car just gave up on him basically into the wall. But he was talking I on the radio about, and I don't know what the terminology exactly means, but he was saying how the fronts were -10 on temperature and this and that. I don't know if it was that the car couldn't get the tires up to temperature. They took the heat blankets off the front wheels too soon in the garage. I don't know what that means exactly. But yeah, to turn it around and put in a nice weekend, I think they had 4 of the 7 overtakes on the whole race, and the other 3 were just Colapinto at the start.
Okay.
No, I'm making that up, but it felt
I was yes-anding.
It was it really felt like there were very few passes, but Carlos, I specifically remember making his way up and getting a couple of good overtakes and everything with the tire strategy, and also solid from Ferrari to be back up in that competitive middle group there towards the top.
Yeah, definitely agree. So worthy of a winner slot. So it was McLaren and Ferrari for me, and then my loser was just Albon. That's more of just a personal. He's my outside of the top teams. He's my driver type deal. Yeah. I don't know what you would say. So yeah, just to have a retirement for him, especially where the teams below them are close, the teams that are above them in the championship are not that far away. So you would love to see Albon be able to get some points and be up there with Colapinto, because he can do it. If the car is fast on a circuit, he can do it. So yeah, I think he would just miss out on opportunities.
Yeah, and I had him as one of my losers as well because it's a bummer to see him DNF when I felt like both the Williams cars were in a position to potentially score points on the weekend. They started or qualified in P11, P12. With Colapinto just being like 100th off of Albon. But it just sounded like a kind of rough weekend for Albon. His radios during qualifying were very like just taken aback by the car's performance and whatnot. Just seeming to struggle a bit, and then I think that like boiled over into the start of the race as well, where Colapinto, in my opinion, and from everywhere else that I saw, like made just a phenomenal like start up to turn one, braking very late, making the corner easily. Some other drivers chose to take to avert their course and everything, instead of battling through that turn and all. But like huge props to him as a young driver, but to hear Albon, like I just felt like there was a lot of frustration on the weekend for Albon. His immediate reaction was like, what is Colapinto doing, dive bombing in there and all. But then the car overheating and his DNF and everything, they're like the temperatures on everything are too hot, we're sorry. And it's just a weekend to forget for Alex to be able to move on. But my other loser for the weekend was Lewis Hamilton, and not in a really egregious way, but he qualifies in P3, has a phenomenal qualifying, the best that he's had with Mercedes in a while. It feels like this season. Puts the car up there ahead of George and everything. And then even especially after the weekend, I was seeing from him, he was just like he was arguing with the team about being put onto the soft tires. He did not want the soft tires for the race, and when the tire blankets came off, he was the only driver on the soft tires. And so he like I can't imagine how frustrating that feels to be like, this is a bad strat, listen to me, I don't want this, please give me something different. And they're like, sorry Lewis, this is what we're giving you, and then no one else is doing it because it was the wrong decision. So starting P3, and then he drives a perfectly fine race just on a bad strategy and finishes behind George down to P6. And if he had just been given the tires he asked for, who knows? He might have been that podium position up there maintaining that Lando, Max, Lewis qualifying order. But we just don't know because they were like, well, now you have to pit super early and just be stuck in traffic indefinitely, and then have really bad tires at the end of the race. Good luck. So not to his own fault at all, but that's why Lewis was my second loser on the weekend, because he really got kind of shafted in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely short end of the stick as far as the like split strategy goes, and of course, Russell goes on to just have like a pretty smooth sailing race overall. So yeah, I can imagine that debrief was a little uncomfortable from the shellacking I hope Lewis gave them, because yeah, the soft tire start was not great.
No, did not pan out at all. But yeah, so my winners and losers this week. But just looking at some of the other teams that we haven't discussed quite as much. Checo, a tough weekend, trying to kind of bounce back from the disappointment in Baku with his crash with Carlos Sainz. Just has a tough qualifying performance, and then follows it up with just being stuck in traffic, stuck behind that wide Haas of Nico Hülkenberg. So and like that's because of just a struggle in qualifying and everything. But that's what can happen at these street circuits. So a tough weekend for him. And on Max's side, we've talked about him for other reasons, but I felt like he maximized his opportunities on the weekend. Like he drove a super clean race. He had a good start, just about the same as Lando's, and so Lando kept the lead, and then from there he just kind of cruised. Like he didn't really have the ability to put pressure on, but I think in general for his pace and everything, like he looked pretty decent. The car looked a little bit better than it did at Baku for him, and so kind of again a damage mitigation to some extent with minimizing the point differential that Lando gets there, picking up 7 points. We've got I think 6 races to go, and so Lando needs like a little over 8 points per race more than Max. So if Max finishes P2 to Lando P1, even if Lando gets like every fastest lap, I don't know how it works out with the sprint races, but I think Max still wins the championship in that position. So at this point, Max just doing everything he can to haul that Red Bull forward, and a great qualifying from him as well to even be up in P2. Like that was impressive in that one lap shootout that we had in Q3.
Yeah, which interestingly was, I mean, those types of scenarios are always tight, obviously. With the field of drivers that you have right now, you weren't really worried. Like, all of them are really good on, over one lap. And you did see the pole position, or the tentative pole position, change a couple of times there and in the final moments. So yeah, I think a really exciting Q3. And I wonder, because both teams, like during the race, and this is just thinking about Max's race, both teams during the race, I know Max was like pretty far behind. They were just like waiting for a safety car. I wonder if Red Bull just kind of waited as long as they could and then just realized like, yeah, it doesn't get much better from here, and then so you pit and just kind of accept second.
Yeah, well, and that was like just another crazy thing from this. Like, this is the Singapore had a 100% safety car record, and so I think a lot of the drivers, especially as you were getting later and later on those first sets of tires, they were like, all right, come on, who's gonna bin it? Like, yep. when is someone? And I really thought coming back in hot off the presses with 0 penalty points that Kevin Magnussen, when I heard he had a puncture, I was like, oh, here we go. Bring it back, tighten up the pack, let's get going. And he just limps around the track with a puncture and meanders back into the pit lane. Everyone's like, oh, bye, K-Mag, and just like going around him like very politely and all. And we get nothing, even from that puncture. But yeah, a weird weekend with no incidents. Like, we haven't gotten an actual safety car since Canada, which is quite a long time. We had the virtual safety car, of course, at the end of Baku. But yeah, I mean, Canada was. Let's see here. We've had 3, 6, 9 race weekends that we have not seen the safety car since Canada, which is, I mean, it speaks a lot to the quality of the drivers and the vehicles and everything, that even the DNFs have been able to make it back to. Or either have a virtual safety car or be able to make it back to the pits to retire. But yeah, like a kind of peculiar Singapore Grand Prix. with that as well.
Yeah, it's just Weenie Hut Formula One Junior now. Like, that's actually why they're not allowed to curse anymore, because they're not out there risking their lives. The Formula One, the FIA is just laughing when the drivers are like, "We're out here risking our lives. Like, we should be able to say ass." The FIA is like, "No, dog. Like, you guys are on marshmallows out there."
Maybe that's what it is. But man, I just like the teams, I was waiting for the safety car. I was like, when's it gonna happen? Like, come on.
Man, you guys are you're such terror freaks. Like, you just want blood and carnage. Like, you're not happy with just safety happening. It's honestly disgusting.
The children long for the war. Like, I mean, it was, I don't want anything. It was just like, I was resigned to the fact that there was just going to be a safety car, but they got Logan Sargent out just in time, and now no safety car. So,
yeah, man,
you
really just drink the Kool-Aid, don't you? You're just like, they tell me 100%. Bring on the crash. Bring it on. They tell me I'm going to have one. Where is it?
Okay, not even necessarily a crash. Like, you have Alex Albon's car where they're like, literally every part of your car is about to spontaneously combust.
Sure.
So, and he's like, well, I'll just get it back to the pit lane so it can catch on fire in front of everyone. Like... Even something like that, like, it's one of the hottest races of the year. Like, you don't even get a car pulling off to the side in due to the heat and everything there. You don't have, like, and not, this is not a wishful thinking or anything, but Lance Stroll, every time he got out of the car this weekend and took off his helmet, looked ghastly. Like, he does not handle the heat well. And you don't even have him having any issues. He didn't have a great race, but it was just a peculiar Singapore Grand Prix, and I think through some of the strategies a little out of whack, but yeah, I mean, I was waiting for K-Mag to cause some mayhem. I mean, 0 penalty points, 6 races left. He can rack up 2 points per weekend and get banned at the last race when he's leaving Formula One. Like, it would have been perfect. Like, it lines up, and...
Oh, dude, that's so funny. You're talking about one Haas driver being a blue shell, like, in one way, and I have Hulkenberg, like, I have an honest note here that says Hulkenberg is the blue shell right now. Not enough tools to win, but enough pace to make other teams uncomfortable. Like, that's, like, a legit point, but you're just like, nah, just get my boy Magnussen in there and just run them off the road. Just literally blue shell them.
Oh, yeah, Hulkenberg is... when the blue shell is thrown at you and you slow down so that it collects all the people behind you with you.
You and just slam the brake on, let them pass you.
Or you just, like, I played Mario Kart Double Dash mostly, and so it locks onto you even if someone goes past you.
Okay.
But I definitely eased back on my pace so that I was, like, riding next to someone for when I'm getting hit. Absolutely. So they're getting hit by it too. But then Magnussen is the guy throwing the blue shell. He's like, here it comes. Good luck. Like, yeah, definitely two different ends of the blue shell there. But, but yeah, any final notes on the race weekend here in Singapore?
No, I have no further real points to make.
All right, well, we could just go down funny rabbit holes for a while, but instead of that, let's wrap this up with the cool down lap for this week. We've got the Rose, Thorn, and Seed coming your way. Do you want to lead off? Should I lead off? How you want to do this?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you mine real quick. So my Rose here for the week. The cats always are a good time. I'm learning that I can be a cat person just as much as you can be a dog person. It may not even be like a spectrum thing. You can be on both sides, right? So having the cats is great, and they're just like a wonderful thing to play with. It's fun when you come home and they're running up and like chirping at you. It's like it's kind of cool. So that's my Rose. Thorn, I could go off, but I will tell you the problem. I will tell you the solution that I presented to the problem instead of just complaining. Yesterday, they community recognized rules committee for the Magic the Gathering format of Commander put out a ban and restricted announcement for Commander, and there were 4 cards that were banned yesterday for the format of Commander, and to say the least, I was not happy about it. So, in the, like,
is the Nagila deck fucked?
Yes.
Oh, wait, really?
Actually.
I was just going off of I was just guessing which of your favorite decks was gonna get hit.
Yeah, you got it. But I presented, we're in the group chat talking about it. We're joking. We played Magic on Monday when they released it, so we talked about it then. And I made a pretty good case. My solution is, look, we ignore the community ban list. We go through it card by card and decide for ourselves what we decide to keep on it, because I know a bunch of people in our play group that have those cards, and it's like, what? We're just not going to play them because these people said so? It's like, no, I really want to play with the cards that I paid good money for. So that was my angle. We haven't, moved forward on it. I think it's going to be a bit of a slow process. But yeah, big thorn in my side, because I know convincing them being the other members of my play group, some of them may be easier than others, but some may just be like, no, they say banned, so get banned. And it's like, okay. So I think it might be a little bit of a battle here, which is uber frustrating.
Yeah, that's difficult, because there's not, if it hasn't. And I feel like you've done this with other banned things when it comes to your playgroup, is that you just discuss them and decide on your own. So I think that's a reasonable solution, because if you guys have not run into an issue because of said cards to this point, then why does that affect you? That's the way that I look at it.
Exactly, and that's the way I think we do, yeah. Or some of us in the group can look at it and could make solid arguments for other cards on the ban list to say, this could probably come off for us. If you want to play a copy of this that you have, or you want to buy a copy of it, go for it. I don't care. And this ban, radically shifted my thinking. I'm almost of oh yeah, no, I don't want to tell anybody what they can and can't play, because now that it's happened to me, I'm like, oh no, please don't do that, right? So yeah, basically I just hope we're able to kind of open up the discussion more and figure out what works best for us as a 6-man play group, as opposed to thinking about Commander as a whole. So that's my thorn. Like I said, I presented a solution, so I'm not just stewing in my hatred. And then my seed here for the week, I'll make this one short because I don't have anything to say yet. But boy, is October the best month of the year. Worlds 2024 for League of Legends coming up. Literally starts tomorrow at 8 a.m. with the playing stage. Brother, I have never been so ready in my life. I am so fucking stoked.
I'm excited too. I watched Kadril's video of all the things you need to know leading into Worlds, because I have not been paying a lot of attention. I know that Cloud9 isn't there, sad for me, but I'm looking forward to seeing some good League of Legends and everything. It's always exciting, the storylines that kind of come through. So yeah, it's a fun time of year.
Going to be great, but I'm looking forward to hearing what your Rose, Thorn, and Seed here for the week is, so give it to me, sir.
Yeah, so my rose is honestly that I've just got a little bit of a breather in terms of weekends of like not having too much going on. This past weekend, I was able to knock out just some yard work that I'd been putting off and do some little odds and ends and catch up on things, and also just like sit and watch football for a long time on Saturday and Sunday. So just a like nice time with that. Colleen did some awesome Halloween decorating, so the front of our house looks like sick. Great time of year in terms of that as well. But yeah, I'm just happy that this coming weekend I don't have too much going on, or at least like just relaxing, like around the house kind of fun stuff. So definitely just enjoying having that time a little bit to just chill after a pretty busy summer. But my thorn for this week is I just randomly got like an infection under the bed of my fingernail of my thumb over the weekend. So like Friday night, I was like, my thumb kind of hurts and it's a little bit swollen, like right around the nail bed. I was like, that's weird. Let me look up what to do. And it's like, soak your hand in warm Epsom salt water like 3 times a day. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'll do that. And just all Saturday, it was just like getting worse and worse and more painful. Sunday, the same thing. And I eventually like, Colleen's mom is a nurse, so I like texted her. I'm like, hey, what do you recommend? She's like, soak it in warm Epsom salt water. And I'm like, been doing that. So from there, I did a little telemed and got antibiotics called in. But just, it was like very painful, like all weekend long, to the point that Sunday night I was like, I might go to urgent care at like midnight because my thumb hurt so bad, and I was starting to like hypochondriac myself to be like, do I feel the infection spreading? Now my other fingers are starting to feel weird, and I was like getting way into my head because it was just like this ongoing like thing. I like suffered through. I did my yard work and powered through that with the pain in my thumb and everything, and just like tried to push through. And I have a decently high pain tolerance, but it hurt pretty bad. So Monday morning, I get the antibiotics in me. I go about my day at work, and somehow, not to get too gross, the pressure released a bit from it, and got some of whatever out of the way, so the thumb's on the mend and everything. But it was like an all weekend long annoyance. The antibiotics, I didn't know that I react poorly to them on an empty stomach, which of course my ADHD medicine typically means that I don't have anything in my stomach. But I felt like I like took the dose last night when like went and started cooking dinner and everything, and felt like I was gonna pass out. I had to lay down for like 20 minutes just to like feel. I was like sweating. I was wearing a sweatshirt, and I just like took it off and threw it to the side. I was like, and I had no idea what was causing this. I was
like a heat flash kind of thing.
Yeah, heat flash, like woozy. My head was all it was just it has just caused all sorts of mayhem in my life for the past couple days. But fortunately, like I said, on the mend, and now I'll just be on antibiotics to make sure things all get out of my system properly.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, not the most exciting thorn for me this week. Just a random, and I do not know how it happened either, which is the other annoyance. Like, I didn't get a splinter. I didn't cut it or do anything like weird that I feel like would have caused it. So who knows? But my seed this week is Friday. Colleen and I get to babysit her two nieces, the 6 and 8-year-old. So we're gonna take them out to dinner at the burger shop near us, get some burgers and milkshakes, have a little movie night back here at the house, and so I'm just looking forward to that. It's going to be a nice time. I haven't really seen them very much since we got back from the wedding and everything, so it'll be a nice time to just spend with them. They're hilarious, and I'm sure it'll be a good time, so I'm looking forward to that on Friday.
Hell yeah. That sounds like a fun weekend activity.
Yeah, so like I said, a little bit of stuff going on the weekend, but definitely will be a relaxing, kind of laid back time. But yeah, that brings me to wrap up my Rose, Thorn, and Seed, and brings us to the end of this week's episode with the Singapore Grand Prix review. But as always, we just really appreciate everyone taking the time to spend with us. We love putting this out here after every race week. So yeah, thank you for listening along.
Thank you so much for joining. We appreciate your time so much. Remember, new episodes after every Formula One race weekend. Tell your friends and family where you heard those amazing Formula One jokes. Peace out, everybody. Thank you very much for listening.
See you guys.